The Anderson family had always been the kind of neighbors who kept their lawn meticulously trimmed, their driveway power washed to perfection, and their property lines surveyed down to the last inch. When we moved into the house next door 3 years ago, I thought we'd won the neighbor lottery. Sandra Anderson seemed like the type who'd bring over casseroles and offer to water your plants during vacation. I couldn't have been more wrong. It started innocently enough. Our kids, Emma, age 7, and little Jake, barely 5, had been begging for a pool since we moved in. Not some elaborate in-ground installation that would require permits and contractors, but one of those large above-ground pools that families across America set up in their backyards every summer. After months of pleading and the promise of good behavior, my wife Rachel and I finally caved. We spent an entire weekend in May assembling what the kids dubbed the best pool ever. A 15-foot round, 4-foot deep slice of summer paradise that sat proudly in our backyard exactly 3 feet from the property line. The first few weeks were magical. Emma and Jake spent hours splashing around, their laughter echoing through the neighborhood. Rachel and I would sit on our deck with cold drinks, watching them play Marco Polo and seeing their swimming confidence grow day by day. Even some of the other neighborhood kids started asking if they could join in, and we happily said yes. There's something beautiful about children's pure joy, and our backyard became the unofficial community gathering spot for kids ranging from toddlers to preteens. But Sandra Anderson watched it all with the intensity of a hawk circling prey. The first complaint came on a Tuesday morning in June. Sandra appeared at our front door at exactly 7:47 a.m. I remember because I was rushing to get the kids ready for their summer camp. She stood there in her perfectly pressed khaki pants and polo shirt, holding a clipboard like she was conducting some sort of official inspection. "I need to discuss the noise ordinance violations," she announced without so much as a good morning. "Your pool activities are disrupting the peaceful enjoyment of my property." I blinked, still holding Jake's backpack in one hand and Emma's lunchbox in the other. "I'm sorry, what noise violations? The kids usually don't even get in the pool until after 10 a.m. and they're out by dinner time." Sandra's lips pursed into a thin line. "Children screaming and splashing creates an excessive noise disturbance. I've documented 17 separate incidents over the past 2 weeks." She thrust her clipboard toward me, revealing a handwritten log with times, dates, and detailed descriptions like excessive splashing, lasted 4 minutes, and high-pitched squealing, counted 23 separate instances. That's when I realized Sandra Anderson wasn't just a perfectionist, she was completely unhinged. Over the following weeks, Sandra's complaints escalated from bizarre to harassment. She called the city's code enforcement office claiming our pool was an unsightly nuisance. She contacted our homeowners association insisting that above-ground pools violated some obscure aesthetic guideline that didn't actually exist. She even started timing the kids' pool sessions with a stopwatch, appearing at our fence line with a clipboard whenever they got too loud for her impossibly high standards. The breaking point came on the hottest day of July. Emma had invited 3 friends over for her birthday party, and they were having the time of their lives in the pool. The sound of their laughter and splashing was the perfect soundtrack to a perfect summer day, until Sandra marched over and began recording them with her phone, claiming she needed evidence of the disturbance for her next complaint. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. I had had enough of Sandra Anderson's reign of terror over our family's simple summer joy. ***, ready for section 2? Let me know when you'd like me to continue with the next part of this escalating neighborhood drama ***. The morning after Emma's pool party, I woke up to find a certified letter slipped under our front door. My hands actually trembled as I opened it because nothing good ever comes in certified mail at 6 a.m. Sandra had outdone herself this time. She'd hired a lawyer. The letter was 3 pages of legal jargon that basically boiled down to this: remove the pool within 72 hours or face legal action for creating a private nuisance, violating noise ordinances. And this one made me laugh out loud. Operating an unpermitted recreational facility. The lawyer had clearly never seen our simple above-ground pool because he was treating it like we'd built a water park in our backyard. Rachel found me in the kitchen, staring at the letter while my coffee grew cold. "What's wrong? You look like someone died." "Sandra's suing us," I said, sliding the paper across the table. "She wants the pool gone or she's taking us to court." Rachel read it twice, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief to pure rage. "She can't do this. It's our property. It's a legal pool, and we're not violating any actual ordinances." "I know that, and you know that, but apparently Sandra's lawyer thinks he can intimidate us into compliance." I looked out our kitchen window toward the pool, where Emma and Jake were already eyeing the water despite the early hour. The question is, what do we do about it? That's when my brother-in-law Mike called. Mike's a contractor who's dealt with his fair share of difficult neighbors, and when I told him about Sandra's latest escalation, he was quiet for a long moment. "You know what, Tom," he finally said. Sometimes you have to fight crazy with clever. I've got an idea, but you're going to have to trust me on this one. Mike's plan was brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of fighting Sandra in court or removing the pool like she demanded, we were going to relocate it. Not to another part of our yard, to his house 30 miles away. We'd disassemble our pool, store it at Mike's place, and wait. Sandra would get exactly what she wanted, a pool-free backyard. But she'd also revealed just how unreasonable and vindictive she really was when she inevitably found something else to complain about. The key, Mike explained as we started draining the pool that Saturday morning's documentation. We're going to be the most reasonable, accommodating neighbors anyone's ever seen. When Sandra shows her true colors, everyone will know the real problem is. The kids were heartbroken, of course. Emma kept asking why the mean lady got to decide whether they could have fun in their own backyard, and I didn't have a good answer. Jake, bless his 5-year-old heart, offered to talk to the lady and tell her we'll be more quiet. It broke my heart to explain that some people can't be reasoned with. As we dismantled the pool piece by piece, I noticed Sandra watching from her kitchen window. She didn't even try to hide her satisfaction. Every few minutes, she'd emerge from her house to check her mail or water her plants, making sure to get a good look at our progress. By Sunday evening, the pool was completely gone, leaving only a sad circle of flattened grass where our summer memories used to be. I thought that would be the end of it. I was so wrong. On Monday morning, Sandra appeared at our door again, this time with what looked like a rental agreement. I need you to sign this acknowledgement that you remove the nuisance and agree not to reinstall any similar recreational equipment without written notice to adjacent property owners. Sandra, I said, trying to keep my voice level, the pool is gone. What more do you want? I want assurance that this won't happen again. I want your commitment in writing that you'll maintain appropriate standards for this neighborhood. That's when I realized Mike had been absolutely right. Removing the pool hadn't satisfied Sandra. It had empowered her. She tasted victory, and now she wanted complete control over our property decisions. The pool had never really been the problem. Sandra Anderson was a bully who found her target, and she wasn't going to stop until she crushed us completely. I looked at her standing on my doorstep with her clipboard and her rental agreement, and something inside me snapped. You know what, Sandra? I'm not signing anything. The pool is gone, you got what you wanted, and now you need to leave us alone. Her eyes narrowed into slits. This isn't over, Tom. Not by a long shot. She was right about that. But what Sandra didn't know was that I'd started recording every interaction we had. Mike had insisted on it, and I was about to discover just how prescient that advice would prove to be. Asterisk, ready for section 3. The plot is about to take a major turn that Sandra never saw coming, asterisk. 2 weeks after the pool disappeared, Sandra's behavior took a turn that crossed the line from annoying to genuinely disturbing. She'd apparently decided that winning the pool battle gave her jurisdiction over our entire property, and she began what I can only describe as a campaign of escalating surveillance and harassment. It started with the morning inspections. Every day at 7 a.m. sharp, Sandra would emerge from her house with her clipboard and conduct what she called property compliance checks. She'd walk the perimeter of our yard, taking photos of our trash cans if they were out 15 minutes past pickup time, measuring our grass height with an actual ruler, and documenting any toys the kids left outside. She'd then email these violations to the HOA, the city, and apparently anyone else who would listen. But the cameras were what really unnerved us. Sandra installed 4 security cameras on her property, and while she claimed they were for home security, they were all angled directly at our house. One pointed at our driveway, another at our backyard, a third at our front porch, and the fourth, this one really got to Rachel, was aimed directly at our children's bedroom windows. This has to be illegal, Rachel said one evening as we watched Sandra adjust the camera angle for a better view of our deck. She's basically stalking us. I'd already called the police twice, but they said that as long as the cameras were on Sandra's property, there wasn't much they could do. The officer who responded to our second call was sympathetic but honest. Unless she's trespassing or directly threatening you, this falls into civil territory. You need to get a restraining order. That's when Mike suggested we dig deeper into Sandra's background. People this obsessive usually have a history, he said. Maybe it's time to find out what we're really dealing with. What we discovered was shocking. Sandra Anderson wasn't just a difficult neighbor. She was a serial litigator with a pattern of harassment spanning 3 decades. Through public records, searches, and conversations with people in her previous neighborhoods, we uncovered a trail of lawsuits, restraining orders, and property disputes that followed Sandra wherever she lived. In her last neighborhood, she'd sued a family for having a vegetable garden that she claimed attracted rodents and insects. Before that, she'd taken legal action against an elderly man for his excessive bird feeders. The pattern was always the same. Sandra would identify a target, document every minor perceived infraction, escalate to lawyers and authorities, and make life so miserable that families would either comply with her demands or move away entirely. But the most disturbing discovery came from her ex-husband, who I tracked down through social media. David Anderson had divorced Sandra 5 years ago, and when I called him, the relief in his voice was palpable. "She's not well," he told me quietly. "Sandra has this compulsion to control everything around her. It started small, organizing my closet, planning my schedule, but it escalated into monitoring my every move. She kept detailed logs of when I came and went, what I ate, who I talked to. When I finally left, she tried to get restraining orders against me for stalking her, even though I was just trying to collect my belongings." David's revelation explained so much about Sandra's behavior, but it also terrified me. We weren't dealing with a difficult neighbor. We were dealing with someone who had a documented history of obsessive, controlling behavior. And now all that focus was trained on my family. The breaking point came on a sweltering August afternoon when Emma was playing in our backyard with her friend Sophia. They were running through the sprinkler, something we'd set up since the pool was gone, when Sandra emerged from her house like a woman possessed. "Excessive water usage," she shouted across the fence. "This is a drought-sensitive area. I'm calling the water department." But that wasn't the worst part. As I watched through our kitchen window, Sandra pulled out her phone and began recording the girls. 8-year-old Emma and her friend running around in their bathing suits, being filmed by a woman who was clearly not mentally stable. That's when I snapped. I ran outside, positioned myself between Sandra and the children, and said in my calmest voice, "Sandra, you need to stop recording my daughter right now." "I'm documenting water waste on private property," she replied, but she didn't lower the phone. "You're recording minor children without their parents' permission. Turn off the camera or I'm calling the police." What happened next changed everything. Sandra's face contorted with rage and she screamed, "You can't tell me what to do. This is harassment. You're threatening me." And then, with my phone still recording our conversation, Sandra Anderson made the call that would finally expose her for what she really was. She dialed 911. ***, ready for Section 4. This is where Sandra's plan completely backfires and the tables turn in the most dramatic way possible. ***. I watched in stunned disbelief as Sandra paced back and forth in her driveway, phone pressed to her ear, gesturing wildly toward our house. Emma and Sophia had run inside the moment Sandra started yelling, but I stayed put, my own phone still recording everything. "Yes, I need police immediately," Sandra's voice carried clearly across our adjoining driveways. "My neighbor is threatening me and harassing me. He's being verbally abusive and I fear for my safety." A 911 dispatcher's voice was calm and professional. "Can you tell me what kind of threats were made?" Mama told me I couldn't record on my own property. "He's trying to intimidate me and control what I do in my own yard. This is harassment and I want him arrested." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Sandra was literally rewriting reality in real time, turning a reasonable request to stop filming children into a criminal threat. But what she didn't know was that I wasn't the only one recording. Mike had installed a security system at our house the week before, not cameras pointed at Sandra's property, but a comprehensive system that captured audio and video of our own yard and the property line area. Everything Sandra had just told the 911 dispatcher was being contradicted by crystal-clear footage, showing her filming children and me calmly asking her to stop. "Ma'am, are you in immediate physical danger?" the dispatcher asked. "He could become violent at any moment," Sandra replied, her voice taking on a trembling quality that would have been convincing if I hadn't been standing 20 feet away watching her perform. "He's been escalating his harassment for weeks. I have documentation of his threatening behavior." 20 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. Officer Martinez, whom I'd spoken with before about Sandra's cameras, stepped out of the first patrol car with a look that suggested he remembered our previous encounters. The second officer, a younger woman I had met, approached Sandra, while Martinez walked over to me. "Let me guess." Martinez said quietly, "More neighbor drama, officer." "I have everything on video," I said, holding up my phone. The whole conversation, including her 911 call. I never threatened her. I asked her to stop recording my 8-year-old daughter. Meanwhile, Sandra was giving an Oscar-worthy performance to the other officer, complete with tears and dramatic gestures. "He came charging at me," she sobbed. "I was just trying to document water violations in our drought-conscious community, and he became verbally abusive and threatening." That's when Officer Martinez made the decision that changed everything. "Ma'am," he called over to Sandra, "I'm going to need to see a recording of this incident." Sandra's tears stopped like someone had flipped a switch. "My recording you said you were documenting water violations. I'd like to see that footage and any other evidence you have of threatening behavior." I watched Sandra's face cycle through confusion, panic, and calculation in about 3 seconds. "The recording is for my personal documentation. I don't have to show it to you actually, ma'am. If you're claiming criminal behavior and you have evidence, we need to review it. It's part of our investigation." That's when Sandra made her second critical mistake of the day. Instead of producing the recording that would have supported her claims, she became defensive and evasive. This is harassment by the police. You're taking his side because you've talked to him before. Officer Martinez exchanged a look with his partner that spoke volumes. Sir, he said to me, "Can I see your recording?" I handed over my phone immediately. For the next 5 minutes, both officers watched the footage. Sandra filming children, me politely asking her to stop, Sandra's explosive reaction, and then her 911 call claiming I had threatened her. The transformation in the officer's demeanor was immediate and dramatic. The younger officer walked over to Sandra with a completely different energy. "Ma'am, I need you to understand that filing a false police report is a criminal offense." False report. Sandra's voice shot up an octave. "He threatened me, ma'am. We've reviewed video evidence that contradicts your statements to 911. At no point did this man threaten you. You were recording minor children. He asked you to stop, and you became agitated." But Sandra wasn't done digging her hole deeper. "That video is fake. He probably edited it. This is a conspiracy to harass me." Officer Martinez stepped forward. "Ma'am, the video includes your 911 call, which we can verify against our dispatch records. The timeline and audio are consistent. More importantly, we've had multiple calls about disputes between you and this family, and there's a pattern here that concerns us." That's when Sandra played her final desperate card. "I don't want to press charges against him for harassment. I want a restraining order. This family has been terrorizing me for months." The officers looked at each other, and I could practically see them making a decision. "Ma'am," Officer Martinez said, "based on what we've observed today and our previous interactions, we're going to recommend that you speak with someone about conflict resolution. Filing false reports and making unfounded accusations isn't going to solve your neighbor disputes." Sandra's face turned bright red. "You're all in on it. This is police corruption." "I'm calling your supervisor." "That's your right, ma'am," the younger officer replied calmly. "But I should warn you that if you continue to file false reports or make unfounded 911 calls, you could face charges for misuse of emergency services." As the police officers prepared to leave, Officer Martinez pulled me aside. "I've been doing this for 15 years, he said quietly, "and I've seen this pattern before. She's not going to stop on her own. You might want to consider documenting everything and talking to a lawyer about harassment charges." But Sandra Anderson's 911 call had done something she never intended. It had created an official record of her false accusations and unstable behavior. And unbeknownst to her, that recording was about to find its way to some very interested parties. Asterisk, asterisk, ready for Section 5. This is where Sandra's entire web of lies comes crashing down and justice is served in the most satisfying way possible. Asterisk, asterisk. Within 24 hours of the 911 incident, Mike had worked his magic with our security footage. He compiled a comprehensive video that told the complete story. Sandra filming children, me politely asking her to stop, her explosive reaction, and then her completely fabricated 911 call claiming I had threatened her. A split-screen comparison between what actually happened and what she reported was devastating in its clarity. "You need to see this," Rachel said, finding me in her home office the next morning. She was holding her laptop with a mixture of excitement and disbelief on her face. Emma's teacher shared our video in the neighborhood Facebook group. I leaned over to look at the screen, and my jaw dropped. Our neighborhood Facebook group, which usually averaged maybe a dozen likes on posts about lost cats or garage sales, was absolutely exploding. The video had been shared 847 times in 12 hours, with over 300 comments from neighbors I'd never even met. The comments were eye-opening. "OMG, this is the same woman who called the city on us for our Halloween decorations being too scary for children. She reported our dog to animal control for excessive barking when he was inside our house sleeping. Sandra tried to get our elderly neighbor cited for having a non-conforming garden gnome. I thought she was just quirky, but this is harassment. My daughter goes to school with Emma. Sandra called the school claiming their family was neglecting their children because the kids played outside past 7 p.m. in summer. Story after story poured in from neighbors who had been individually targeted by Sandra, but never realized they were part of a larger pattern. The one who thought she was the only victim of Sandra's complaints about her wind chimes. The family who merely moved away after Sandra's relentless campaign against their basketball hoop. The teenager who quit practicing guitar after Sandra filed noise complaints about afternoon practice sessions. But the most shocking revelation came from Mrs. Patterson, our 78-year-old neighbor who lived 2 streets over. Her comment made my blood run cold. Sandra Anderson has been calling Adult Protective Services on me for 6 months, claiming I'm being neglected and that my family is exploiting me financially. She told them I was confused and couldn't care for myself. I had to endure 3 separate investigations proving my competency. I had no idea who was making these reports until I saw this video. This woman has been trying to destroy my life." Within 48 hours, the video had spread beyond our neighborhood Facebook group. Someone had shared it to the city's community page, where it caught the attention of local news stations. By Thursday morning, I was getting calls from reporters wanting to interview us about the neighbor from hell. But the real bombshell came when Channel 7's investigative reporter, Maria Santos, decided to dig deeper into Sandra's history. What she had uncovered was a decades-long pattern of abuse that stretched across 3 states and 7 different neighborhoods. The segment aired on Friday evening, and it was devastating. Maria had tracked down Sandra's previous victims, families who had been forced to move, elderly residents who had been harassed into isolation, and even Sandra's own ex-husband, who finally felt safe enough to speak publicly about her behavior. Sandra Anderson represents a kind of domestic terrorism that flies under the radar, Maria reported, using legal systems, government agencies, and community resources as weapons to control and punish her neighbors. Our investigation found that she has filed over 200 complaints with various authorities in the past 5 years alone, with a success rate of less than 3%. The report also revealed something that explained Sandra's obsession with documentation. She had been receiving disability benefits for anxiety and stress-related disorders, while simultaneously conducting her surveillance and harassment campaigns. The footage of her aggressive confrontations and calculated false reports directly contradicted her claims of being too mentally fragile to work. By Monday morning, Sandra Anderson's world had completely imploded. They HOA, after reviewing Maria's report and the mountain of evidence from neighbors, issued a formal cease and desist order against Sandra for violating community harassment policies. The city announced they would no longer respond to her complaints without corroborating evidence from other sources. Adult Protective Services opened an investigation into her false reports about Mrs. Patterson. And most satisfying of all, the district attorney's office decided to prosecute her for filing false police reports and misuse of emergency services. But perhaps the most poetic justice came from an unexpected source, Sandra's landlord. Yes, it turned out she didn't even own the house she was so obsessively protecting, decided not to renew her lease after seeing the news coverage. Apparently, having a tenant who made the evening news for harassing neighbors wasn't the kind of publicity he wanted for his property. The day Sandra moved out was like Christmas morning for the entire neighborhood. I watched from my kitchen window as she loaded her belongings into a moving truck, her surveillance cameras and clipboards boxed up alongside her furniture. She never once looked toward our house, but I could see the defeat in her posture. That evening, Mike and I reassembled the pool in our backyard. Emma and Jake's squeals of delight as they jumped back into the water were the sweetest sounds I'd ever heard. Half the neighborhood kids showed up within an hour, and we ended up having an impromptu pool party that lasted until well after dark. Mrs. Patterson brought over cookies. The family with the wind chimes brought their guitar-playing teenager, who gave us an impromptu concert. Even Officer Martinez stopped by during his patrol, accepting a cold drink and laughing as he watched the kids play. As I sat on my deck that night, watching my children play with their friends in the pool that had started this whole saga, I reflected on what we learned. Sandra Anderson had thought she could control us through fear, intimidation, and abuse of authority. She counted on us being isolated, intimidated, and unwilling to fight back. But she'd made one critical mistake. She underestimated the power of truth, community, and a simple security camera. Her own 911 call, the call she thought would finally destroy us, had instead exposed her for exactly what she was. The pool stayed, Sandra left, and our neighborhood learned that sometimes the best way to deal with a bully is to let them expose themselves. The kids are still in the pool every day, their laughter echoing across the yard where Sandra once prowled with her clipboard. And every time I hear them playing, I'm reminded that some battles are worth fighting, especially when the stakes are as simple and precious as a child's right to splash in their own backyard on a summer day. Sandra Anderson thought she could take that away from us. She was wrong. Asterisk, asterisk, the end asterisk, asterisk. Asterisk, this story serves as a reminder that bullies often defeat themselves when good people stand together, document the truth, and refuse to be intimidated. Sometimes justice comes not from fighting fire with fire, but from simply letting the truth shine, asterisk.